We gotta text your death.
Ayesha?
Alright.
Hi, as he said, I am Chaplain Ayesha Kreutz, and I'm the president of the Frederick Douglass Foundation. We are devoted Christians, proud Americans, and active Republicans. I always start off by doing a few things. First, I'd like to acknowledge and honor Jesus Christ, for too often we forget who we are and whose we are. So I just want to thank you, Lord, for all your grace and mercy. Thank you. And please be with me, be with this country, and direct us that your face would shine upon us again. Second, I'd like to acknowledge my husband. He's right there in the crowd. It's with his leadership and love that keeps our family strong and enables me to follow God's call on my life. Third, are there any veterans here? If you are, could you please stand up so we can give you a round of applause? I will forever be in honor of your service. Again, we forget at what great cost our freedom comes, and it's men and women those that are here and around the world that enable us to even stand here today. So thank you. Lastly, I'd like to thank you all for coming out. I know you have to miss work and everything, but being here to be a voice for freedom and responsibility is a huge deal. So thank you. One of our goals here at the Frederick Douglass Foundation is to educate not only blacks but everyone about blacks' true history in the U.S. and our Christian, specifically as it pertains to our Christian history and our Republican history. There's an old lawyer's adage that goes like this: when you have facts on your side, argue the facts. When you have the law on your side, argue the law. When you have neither on your side, change the subject of the question and the motives of your opposition. Well, these days, liberals never have the facts on their side, and unless they get a whack job liberal judge to illegally write a law from the bench, they don't have the law on their side either. Therefore, they resort to changing the subject and questioning motives. And because Obama's black, questioning the Republicans' motives these days means pulling out the old playbook and calling us racists. Well, I'm sick and tired of being called a racist because I disagree with Obama's agenda. One of the videos we here at the Frederick Douglass Foundation promote is American History in Black and White by David Barton. Now, here are some facts about the Party of Slavery, Segregation, and the KKK, better known as the Democrat Party. Fact. In 1787, the Constitution was written and thus begun the long fight for freedom from slavery and civil rights for black people. I know, what about the Three-Fifths Clause? Everybody inevitably asks that. No, Frederick Douglass, he was born into slavery and later escaped to New York to become a famous Republican abolitionist who's buried right here in Rochester. He came to a different conclusion. While studying originally under white abolitionist William Lloyd Garrison, he agreed that the Constitution was pro-slavery, but later, as Douglass actually studied the Constitution and studied it more conclusively, he concluded that it was an anti-slavery document. He wrote, quote, "It is in its letter and spirit an anti-slavery instrument demanding the abolishment of slavery as a condition of its own existence as the supreme law of the land," unquote. The Three-Fifths Clause dealt exclusively with representation and not the worth of a black man as a human. Its purpose was to hold down the representation of the slaveholding states in Congress so that the elimination of slavery would eventually be legislative reality. And it eventually was. True, not until the Republican Party was formed and under Lincoln. But quit telling me that I'm a racist. Fact. In 1854, the anti-slavery Democrats, Whigs, and Free Soil advocates of emancipation formed the Republican Party to fight slavery. 6 out of the 9 planks of the original platform dealt with black equality and civil rights. The Democrats, however, argued that the abolishment of slavery would lead to the unhappiness of people. Fact. In 1857, the Supreme Court passed the Dred Scott decision, which claimed that blacks were not persons but property and had no rights. And who controlled the Supreme Court then? The Democrats. They need to quit pretending that we're the racists. Fact. In 1860, Lincoln won the presidency with the goal of ending slavery and getting back blacks equal rights. The Democrats started a civil war because they'd rather dissolve the Union than give up their slaves. Quit calling me a racist because I'm Republican.
Yeah. Woo!
Fact. 1862, the Republicans abolished slavery in D.C. In 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation was issued. In 1865, the 13th Amendment abolished slavery, got all 118 Republican votes in Congress, and only 19 of 82 Democrat votes. That's 77% of Democrats voted against freeing the slaves, yet it's the Republican Party that's the racist. Fact, today, while over 80% of Americans support the following proposition, only 13% of Democrats voted to allow voluntary prayer in school, only 21% to allow the public display of the Ten Commandments, only 5% voted to allow free speech for churches, only 15% of Democrats voted to protect marriage, only 17% of congressional Democrats voted to keep under God in the Pledge of Allegiance. Don't tell me the Democrat Party should be called Democratic. There's nothing democratic about a party who regularly overrules the majority of the people. Fact. In 1866, the Democrats formed a national group to regain control. That group was the Ku Klux Klan. Yes, the KKK was formed by the Democrats, for the Democrats, and of the Democrats. They terrorized blacks and whites alike in order to force through fear of death to vote for Democrats. They'd sit in voting booths, holding shotguns to blacks and whites alike, and yet they continue to call us the racist. Fact. And the first 23 blacks elected to the House of Representatives were Republicans, and the first 3 blacks to the Senate were Republicans. And 13 of those were former slaves. So had been slaves. By 1875, the Republicans passed over the resistance of Democrats about 24 civil rights bills and amendments that benefited blacks. But then it would be almost 90 years again before civil rights bills would be passed. And that is because the Democrats regained control. But we were able to do it with again over the majority of the minority of Democrats. And yet I'm the racist. Fact, Democrats were eventually able to end Reconstruction, which is their euphemistic term for removing all federal troops from the former slave states that were there to protect black and white Republicans alike from the violent methods and coercion of the Democrat Party and their KKK minions had formed. Though questioning credentials of the black Republicans in Congress and through intimidating voters, they were able to remove all the black congressmen, and once it became a solid democratic South. Yet the Democrats want to insinuate that us Republicans are racist. It was the Democrats who fought for segregation, for keeping blacks less educated and uneducated. All inner city failing school systems today are run by Democrats and their foot soldiers in the teachers' unions. It was also a Democrat who used Planned Parenthood abortion mills set up in minority neighborhoods to promote the disposal of humans they considered unworthy life. Yet they want to blame failing schools on Republican racism. Fact, it was the Democrats who developed the welfare state in America that installs rules that have essentially re-enslaved black Americans. Yes, I've said it. Welfare is just another form of slavery.
Woo!
The Democrats, through welfare checks, Social Security, Medicaid, food stamps, public housing, and whatever else they have traded. They've traded room with minorities for their votes. It might sound like a good deal, but it's these rules that keep minorities in poverty by limiting the choices they can make. They're not allowed to get married and raise their children in two-parent homes. They're not allowed to get a job that reports their income to the government. They're not allowed to choose where their children go to school. If they live in government-supplied housing, they have to send them to very bad government union-run inner-city schools. And if they violate these rules, they don't get their benefits. The only choice the Democrats want them to have is the choice to kill their unborn baby. Yes, I'll say it again. This is slavery. When a woman doesn't have the freedom to do what is right and what she wants to do because the Democrats in government have her addicted to the welfare check, she is a slave to that government. It prevents her from taking a risk of falling in love with a man whose income may not be as assured as a check from the government. It prevents her from being able to have her children grow up with two parents. It prevents the majority of minority men from having the chance to be a real man in the form of a husband and a father, regulating them to second-class status without responsibilities to anything but their present happiness. It's not a coincidence that 70% of jailed inmates grew up without a father. Don't tell me the Republican Party, which wants to fix this, is a racist party. They're not the ones trying to keep me down while pretending to care about me in exchange for my vote. Abolitionist Frederick Douglass a century ago reminded blacks the Republican Party is the ship, all else is the sea. The history of the black American voting rights in America proves Douglass was right. The history of blacks in American political process shows the blacks were originally drawn to the Republican Party for its values, and blacks made their greatest strides in civil rights by electing Republicans to represent them. But by the years of violence and the economic allurements begun under President Roosevelt, we're finally enticed to join the Democrat Party. The current values of blacks not only are generally more conservative than those of our white counterparts, but are still best represented by the Republican rather than the Democrat Party. It's time we start educating ourselves and others and voting our values, not sound bites meant to brainwash us or train us like Pavlov's dog. Fact, the Democrat Party hasn't changed. Not much. It has always been the party of slavery, and right now, by taking the national debt from 30% of GDP to about 100% of GDP in the last few years, we're left with two choices if we want to avoid insolvency. Pass Paul Ryan's spending cut, then cut some more, or raise taxes 88%. Think about that. Our taxes would be 75 to 80% of our income. This country is broke. And Obama, as the leader of the Democrat Party, seems hell-bent on making sure we are bankrupt into oblivion. When a man does not receive the benefits of his toil, he is a slave. With tax rates that high, we'd all be slaves. Now don't think for a second that I don't find it ironic that it is a black man who's bringing slavery back to America. But that's what's happening. And Barry Obama is doing it at the head of the party of slavery, segregation, and the KKK. So to the Republican folks in Congress, you need to stop being politically correct and start being politically direct. Cut the size and scope of government or find another job. Don't insult us with the so-called $38 billion in cuts, which the CBO scores as only $352 million in cuts. You guys are a joke. We're paying attention, we're taking notes, we're taking names, and we'll come for you in 2012 if you don't do what you promised.
Yeah!
That's not a threat, it's a warning. Oh, and to Massa Obama, I say this. I don't want to be your slave. Thank you.